Hey everyone, hey, welcome to Building Bridges on Discourse Syndicate Network. It's Wednesday night. Guys, some huge news just happened in Hex. I don't think that there's anyone who is involved with Hex at all or really cryptocurrency at all, who isn't aware that CoinMarketCap just correctly moved Hex to number 4. I wonder why it's number 4 instead of number 3. This happened just within the last little bit, so I haven't dug into it too much yet. But that means that Hex is finally on page 1. That's huge news for anyone who's holding the controversial cryptocurrency. And congratulations, guys. I'm really happy. Hopefully we can talk about that a little bit more in the comments later on in the stream. But first, I want to introduce my guest tonight. His name is John Sneisen. He's an economic historian, and he wrote a book. Oh, yeah, they'd already turned it off. So yeah, when I looked on my computer, it was off. So John, I'm going to bring him on so that he can introduce his book. And please give a warm welcome to economic historian John Sneisen. Hi, John.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys? Yeah, so
I'm good.
I'm John Sneisen, as you said, and I have a group called the economictruth.org, which I work with, trying to put out as much knowledge as I can about money and economics so people can get it in more layman terms. Because if you do listen to a lot of the economists out there, it's a lot of stuff that's pretty hard to understand, if at all. So what I try to do is just simplifying things for people and making them understand things. And I've written a couple of books. One is The End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us, which basically goes into the history of how money got created in the first place and how, over time they found ways to, manipulate it. And some people at the top always have been quite in control over, this system of money over the last 1,000+ years. So that's one of my books. And then my other book, I actually wrote on the Canadian economy, which is actually Canada's not doing very well right now. It's in pretty horrible shape. So a lot of my predictions in that book has come true, but it's still a book that really is, if you want to understand how specifically Canada is working, but also I found a lot of people have told me that I was like, oh, it's very similar here in the UK or Australia or Norway or other places around the world as well, where they have similar structures, and we seem to have similar issues everywhere. So,
Yeah, and we definitely are. And so your group, the Economic Truth, so you also have a Discord server, which I don't know, is that still very, very active? Because that was more active before, and now it seems like I see you in Telegram quite a bit.
Well, it's I'm active everywhere, but I just created my own Telegram group for the Economic Truth. But we do have our Tim and John Show Discord, which is actually very active. We have over 500 members there now that are, a lot of them are participating on a daily basis, even sharing information that I don't even have time to share. So it's quite a group of individuals from around the world. I think we have every continent right now that is covered with, members. So it's pretty good to actually get to know exactly what's going on around the world, because when we actually hear things in the media or whatever, it's one thing to just hear rumors. I call it rumors in media today. And instead of actually hearing facts from somebody on the ground that actually lives there or have been there, it's quite two different stories a lot of times. So of what, how media portrays things versus reality.
Media, representation versus the reality is kind of what I we're talking about right before I brought you on, and I'm not sure how much aware you are. So, I like cryptocurrency. We talk about all different kinds of things related to cryptocurrency and finance and DeFi here. But the network that this show is on is primarily focused on, what was, at least at one point very recently, the most controversial project in all of cryptocurrency. So are you familiar with Hex?
You know what? I'm not. So
Okay.
please fill me
Okay.
in. You know, I try to keep on track, but it's pretty hard. Like I have some friends. I might be joining a team soon, like over cryptocurrency that is actually real estate backed. But more about that maybe later. But it's like I'm kind of involved. Like I try to keep track. I have my little portfolio of different cryptocurrencies, but DeFi I have not kept too much track of. So I know that you're an expert on that compared to me,
No,
I
that
think.
was funny. Someone was asking in your group, like, what level of, on a scale of 0 to 10, what level of knowledge would you say that, like everyone in this group has about cryptocurrency? And I said, like, well, crypto in general, I'm not sure, but there are a lot of people who would say that I'm a DeFi expert.
Yeah, exactly.
Not necessarily me, but there are a lot of people who have referred to me that way. So I'm surprised that with your history in economics and finance that you haven't really like delved in to what is DeFi, because it's really about generating passive income so that you make your money work for you.
Oh, no, I definitely are aware of DeFi, of course. Like DeFi is trying to basically get rid of the banks in a more
Mm-hmm.
decentralized manner. Now, some of them are just like wanting to just replace and become banks, which I don't like. But
Yep.
there's some good projects there that actually wants to decentralize finance and really in a good way actually change and take away the power from the big banksters at Wall Street that really is having so much control over our lives. And like some of these projects, I haven't had time to look at all of them, but there's
Yep.
some really good projects out there that are trying to very much do so. One thing that really excites me is, of course, decentralized exchanges. That's one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite things that I really, really enjoy, because that actually takes away the power from what I call, like, what ended up happening was the Coinbase and Binance and all these other ones basically started almost like not fully like banks, but they're acting,
They
in a
became
form
like
way as a third
not just
party, right?
yeah, they gate kept not
Yeah,
just information by like not allowing assets to be listed or not listing assets that wouldn't give them
yeah.
controlling interest in the coins and tokens, but also by manipulating the media to portray negative information, spread FUD, right? And then what we were just talking about before this was so Hex is actually number 3 by market cap, like it's 250 some billion market cap, but coin market cap has it listed as number 201. So even with them reporting the incorrect circulating supply of the token, it should be like number 4 or number 5, but they specifically hold it back to 201 so that it won't show up on the first 2 pages of search results. And then earlier today, there was, I don't know, some kind of slip or something, but for about 30 minutes, Hex took its right place on the front page of CoinMarketCap. And now it's back at 201. So it's funny that you should mention that, like, manipulation of those centralized entities. You're a big fan of decentralized exchanges. Hex is essentially only available on decentralized exchanges because of those, because of what the listing fees are like to get on the
Oh yeah.
centralized. Like, I've watched it. So I work for a crypto marketing company, and I've watched clients and, associated clients pay the outrageous listing fees on their low market cap coins and
Yeah.
then have those exchanges dump, whenever they gain a little bit. And so not only like it's really, not only do you give up control of your assets when they're in a centralized exchange wallet, but you also give up control of what's going to happen to the asset's price. So I'm really glad that you bring that up.
Yeah, there's a lot of market making on these exchanges as well that are
Yeah.
used as price manipulation to just control the price of certain assets. Like you got to pay a lot of money for that. Actually, some friends of mine that I work with right now, currently called Uber State, they have dealt with this for a long time and paid a lot of money to actually like have people trade their their token and so on some of the bigger exchanges.
Yeah.
And I tried actually, like back in the day, I tried we were part of something called UOS, a project that I was an economic advisor to. We tried to list like through an independent exchange offering. And what ended up happening was that it was a massive, like just pump and dump. and that's what mostly happens with a lot of these is, all these controllers that are on there, like big whales and so on. They just buy them up cheap, and then they talk about them highly, and then people fly in and then just dump it, and they make money on it. And it's a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's very much like Wall Street is acting, when it comes to stocks today. Like they're very much like pumping up stocks like more than ever. Like we're starting to live in a more financialized world where everything is based upon just like making money with money. So like we don't have to produce anything of real value anymore, like actually do physical labor or actually creating a product that somebody wants that is in a physical form a lot anymore. So it's become like way more financialized. And of course, throughout history, when that happens, it doesn't end very well over time.
Yeah. Okay. So I really do want to get into giving you like kind of an introduction to Hex, so that because I would really like to get your take. I got Tim's take a couple of years ago when I first got involved with this community, and he I think at the time like was just stuck in some other things, and didn't give it the time. But now we're a couple of years further down the line. But first, I kind of want to get into a couple of questions that I feel like you're the best person maybe in the world to answer. So the first one is how does our monetary system enslave us?
It's very simple. Like one of the major ways that it does it actually uses debt. So when people get into debt, you got to go and get a job to get, pay back that debt. The problem with like how it really enslaves us and how it steals our assets and so over time, and how the bankers actually can, take back those assets for next to nothing from you is by, of course, when you, let's go to the basics. So like let's say I have only $100 in the world, and I'm going to borrow them to you. Well, I'm going to want to charge you an interest because I was like, okay, well, it's going to take, my money. I want it to work for me, so I want to charge an interest. Well, the problem is when that is the only $100 in the world, I want to charge you an interest. Where are you going to get the interest payment from? Like, I want the principal, which is the $100 plus the interest, but the interest doesn't exist in money. So either you will go bankrupt and you would have to give me whatever you created, or you would have to get another loan from me, basically, from that little amount of what you call it, interest. And then again, you would have to borrow that, but then with interest again. So like it's an ever-ending Ponzi scheme where like you always have more interest in circulation than actually like the money that can actually pay it off. So it's basically a Ponzi scheme that we live in, and you need to always feed in more people, and that's why a lot of countries that are struggling with demographics right now, like Germany, nor most of the Western countries actually, they are trying to get mass immigration going so they could actually get more debtors. Like a lot of people are not talking about
that makes sense. Like capitalism relies on the growth of the economy, which would mean the growth of the population, right?
Yeah, and the problem is like the growth of the economy today is not like, okay, so what is growth? Like, is it just manipulating financial assets? Or is it actually like building something that's sustainable for the future, like being a good company that could provide a good product or a good service? Or is it just like shuffling papers around like Wall Street does? That's, you could create GDP of that, but that doesn't necessarily mean the economy is healthy. Like, look at the United States, look at Canada, nor everywhere you look right now, there's a lot of people without work because of the government shutdowns that happen because of this illness. We're not going to mention a name.
Because they started giving everyone money and nobody wanted to go back to work. So I don't know what it's like where you're at, but where I'm at, like every single store, every restaurant, everywhere you go has a now hiring sign
100%.
up.
Oh yeah.
And people don't want to go back to work because they're getting whatever they need.
Well, here in Canada, it was really bad. Like they had something called CERB, CERB, and it was I think at the height there was almost like 10,000 applications, individual applications, and that's 30% of the Canadian population,
Mm-hmm.
almost. That's pretty insane. And but what they did is that they actually gave, I think it was as much as $400 or $500 above minimum wage
Mm-hmm.
to people. So, well, like, why would I work? Why would I risk my life because you got scared to death from
Right.
the disease out there? And people, yeah, were more than happy to sit at home doing nothing, receiving welfare payments, and that's what happened with a lot. And of course, getting them back because they're both afraid, and on top of that, actually like, well, you got to pay a lot more now because the government has given you a lot more money. It's hard to get those people back into the workforce unless you pay, at least, like I heard that McDonald's is so desperate that they had to like pay employees $50 a day just to show up. Uh,
Wow.
it's just
Yeah,
one
I
of the
have
things
heard
that I've
talk
seen
about
lately.
raising national minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I
And the
mean,
food stamps, like the food stamp program in the U.S.,
yeah,
just got raised 25%. Uh, the reason why is because like there's
the
a
cost of
lot of
food.
yeah, a lot of inflation is happening right now. And then you have guys at the Federal Reserve saying like, "Oh, it's transitory," which basically means that it'll go back or it'll like revert back to prices. It's not going to happen. Food prices were up in the U.S. alone. I think it was like 30%. Here in Canada, I think it's like 30 to 50%, depending on the food. It's pretty insane, like the amount of cost. And then for people that were just struggling in the first place, I'm lucky. I don't know about you, but
Very
uh,
lucky.
yeah. So it's like it hasn't been too much of an issue. Like it sucks that you got to pay like 30-40% more for your food, but the people that are on the bottom line or the wrong, like the lower middle class and the poor, they are the ones getting just whacked with these increase in food prices because you need food to survive. It's
Yeah.
it's very simple. If you don't eat, you die. So it's probably the most important thing, other than anything on this planet, is food and water. So like if that increases in prices, and it was actually way before like COVID, like this whole crisis, that we had protests around the world, and a lot of them. When I listened to what the people were protesting, they were protesting not being able to afford food and shelter and all these things. So
Right.
that was already there. And now that the government destroyed the economy by shutting everything down, a lot of places, not everywhere, of course, but a lot of places, it just completely demolished everything. And now they're trying to centrally plan, like trying to get up supply and then spending an insane amount of money into the economy.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. Like look at Venezuela, had a deficit spending last year of 29.9 percent, like negative GDP, so a deficit of 30% to GDP, which means that they had to borrow 30% of their budget. And in Canada, we had about, I think it was like 14%. The US was, I think, 12 or 13, and same with the UK. That's three really, really big economies. It's G7 countries that are spending that much money. And guess who is right up there with them? It's Venezuela and Lebanon, which is in hyperinflation right now. Their currencies are getting destroyed, and people that have saved in those currencies are getting their life savings eradicated, and they're going
Yeah.
from maybe being, somewhat rich and wanting to retire to dirt poor.
Yeah, so that's really unfortunate. So most of the people watching this show right now are into Hex, and just like this is just a quick interlude because I want to get back and ask you another question down that line. But so anyone who has been in Hex for 1 year, independent of staking, which APY is around like 12 to 13% for a single year stake, but just holding liquid assets is up 16,700%.
Yeah,
So
that's not bad.
it's been a great year. Okay, so so I kind of want to ask you a question that's not on my list, but just along those lines, you're saying like you think that they're just going to keep printing money and that the inflation is just going to continue. So what about real estate? So there's some
Mm-hmm.
talk where some people are saying like a real estate crash is imminent, and people are because it's been running so significantly. Do you see that happening?
I would definitely see it happening, because how are they going to get away with, like, now interest rates are at zero, first of all.
Mhm.
So how are they going to lower interest rate? Yeah, they could go to negative. We've seen in Denmark, one of the places where they actually had negative mortgage rates,
Mhm.
which is quite beneficial. You get a mortgage and you actually get paid to have your mortgage, which is pretty crazy and insane world. Because who would actually lend somebody money if they have to pay them to actually, you know, lend money to them? Like, nobody in their insane mind would think that, like, negative interest rates is anything sustainable.
Right.
The elite seem to love it, but like for the everyday person that, are lending money to anybody, it would be like, why would I pay you to borrow my money? You're gonna take risk with my money. Why would I pay you?
So yeah, so where I
Yeah.
live right now is like kind of a boom town, and it's like people are making full cash offers over asking price, over appraisal, because they can't get mortgages because
Yeah.
the lending companies don't want to lend them the money at zero.
Oh, for sure. Like, yeah, they're not gonna go all the way down to zero. The banks wants to make their money at like 2-3%. They would
Mhm.
rather have that than, like, giving you 0%. They would give that to Warren Buffett or Bill Gates.
Sure, of course. Yeah, because
They'll get
the people who don't need the money, right? Yeah.
yeah, the people that uses their money to buy assets, and then, like, as there's more money in circulation, asset prices rises, so they always keep on, like, getting wealthier, always. But
Mhm.
the thing is, like, with this real estate crisis, it's everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
it's here in Canada, like, even where I live, like in a tiny place called in the Interlake region of Manitoba. We have housing prices risen anywhere from 5 to 30%, just over and that's little Manitoba, which is a small province in the middle of Canada.
Okay.
And then elsewhere, like, you got Toronto and Vancouver, the major cities here. When I wrote my book, by the way, back in 2017, I predicted a housing bubble
Mhm.
in Toronto and Vancouver, because they had insane prices. Like, the medium home was somewhere around 1.2 in Vancouver, like very similar to that and that's Canadian dollars, not US dollars. So it's probably around $1 million. But now you're looking at almost $2 million in Vancouver and Toronto. I haven't looked up the number, but it's gotten pretty insane. And actually, in Canada, they had to adjust the CPI, so the, like, inflation, how they calculate inflation, by adding, so the actual cost that, like, they predict that, like, whatever amount of your budget goes to housing. Well, it was before, it was 25.6, which is like nowhere near what the reality is, but now they had to increase it to 30 point something. So they actually had to do that because of housing costs are so drastically up. But the problem is, in the two major cities, the housing costs are 75 to 80% of your salary goes to,
Mhm.
like, paying for housing costs. So, like, your mortgage, your energy costs to that, and of course, like, the property taxes and everything that's kind of surrounding that. So we're seeing a bubble that is pretty epic of proportions, and it's everywhere. Like, my home country, Norway, housing prices are just virtually, like, still insane, like, and they're still going up,
Yeah.
because people are not stopping the gambling, because it's still, like, interest rates are still slowly trickling downwards, of course. So that's another thing, is as long as the interest rates are at zero. And then we had, let me just add to, like, here in Canada, we had the head of the Central Bank of Canada, Tiff McClem, said that, yeah, we're going to keep interest rates at zero until 2023. So just go out there and borrow money. Do that project that you want, or buy the house that you wanted. It's like, yeah, central banker would go out and say that. Like, that's pretty insane in the first place. You wouldn't even hear that from His Highness over there, Jerome Powell,
Yeah.
at the Federal Reserve. But that's kind of the insanity of it. Like, when a central banker literally goes and promotes you to go and get into a whole bunch of debt, and prop up basically the Ponzi scheme, as we said in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Um, the problem is like a lot of when I did a report in 2019 that I worked on for 2020, and one of the things that I looked at there was actually, so what does the average person like have for assets in their portfolio, and it actually showed me that most so like the lower middle class to the poorer people, they have 50 to 60% of their retirement, supposed retirement, is in real estate. So basically, their main home that they live in, which is, I don't even know what to say about that. I'm like in the boat where Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know if you know the saying that your house
Sure.
is not an asset,
Mm-hmm.
not until you sell it at least for a profit, or you
Yeah, in
actually
fact,
can
Robert
make cash
Kiyosaki has
flowing.
recently been on some Hex streamers shows.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like the thing is, if you believe that something is an asset that can't give you a return, like you're pretty much insane, and then relying on that like for your retirement is very dangerous. Like believing that, oh yeah, prices will always go up in real estate. Uh, Meanwhile, like they could actually plummet 50 to 80%. It's
Mm-hmm.
happened before, and especially now with like the insanity that's going on, and on top of that, we had the eviction moratoriums, just getting extended in the United States. So that's
Yep.
another big pressure that is coming in now, where all these like gunked up demand of who knows if it's ever going to be paid back.
Yep.
The mortgages for the investors, like through the rent, or like the people that actually did. Extend their payments on the mortgages. There's a lot of people that did it, and my bank has been all over me trying to like get me to like just basically extend my payments. So it's like, oh yeah, you don't have to pay your interest or whatever, or even your payments for months. But I wouldn't do that. But they've been
Yeah, I know
calling me.
people who've done like cash buybacks and stuff
Yeah,
on their homes. Yeah.
yeah. So it's pretty insane times. And then with these moratoriums, like, so okay, so what if the people, like, are they going to ever get that money paid back that they owe for the last year and a half?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to happen. Like they might do what California just did, use $5 billion of COVID money to actually bail out the landlords. Because
Yeah.
if they don't bail out the landlords would default on their mortgages, and then the mortgage-backed securities that the Federal Reserve is buying a crap ton of,
Uh-huh.
the derivative that blew up in 2008, creating the global financial crisis, those are going to blow up. And then we have corporate derivatives. So all the corporate real estate, like what's happened with COVID, like all this remote work, like are they
Mm-hmm.
ever going to come back to the downtowns as we know them with all these corporate offices? That might not even happen. So they might start to default on their debt, and so like they're in they're in a massive losing battle. Like the Federal Reserve and the government is trying to manipulate everything by, first of all, like by pushing interest rates down to zero. Then second, doing all these spending programs that they had, both corporate bailouts and so on. What I think it has been like, COVID-19 has just been a massive cover up of the global financial crisis on steroids. Because
Sure, and
this,
you've been saying that from the beginning because I was working for Tim and Luke and you really when this all
yeah.
started, when at the beginning of this.
Yeah, it's basically been like the best cover ever for the massive bailout. Nobody's angry at the corporations this time. Like there's no what was it, Occupy Wall Street movement is
Mm-hmm.
not there. There's Black Lives Matter and all this equality stuff, but nobody's talking about the worst inequality that exists in the world, and it's that one created by the central banks.
Mm-hmm.
Like you gotta love how they come out. It's like we fight for equality. It's like they're actually the biggest creator of inequality in the world when they print all this money, and then whoever is sitting on top of the pyramid getting all that free money for next to 0% interest, they're the ones getting rich. Meanwhile, us as slaves, we have to get anywhere from 5 till thousands of percent in interest on either payday loans or credit cards or high interest loans. So it's
Yeah.
like an interest rate apartheid
Yep.
that you're looking at. So yeah, no, it's this whole Ponzi scheme is really like in a lot of trouble. And then they're talking about, like, oh, we're going to taper. And tapering basically means that they're going to try to sell back the asset that they bought from the insolvent banks.
Yep.
So basically, oh, we're going to give you back these terrible assets that you gave us, these derivatives or treasuries. And then, everybody's going to accept them. But that didn't work out too well back in when was it now? I think it was 2016 to 17. So you got what we'll call the taper tantrum, and then that turned into the repo crisis. So the overnight lending markets between banks collapsed on September 19th, no, September 17, 2019. And nobody talked about that at all at the time. Like, I know me and Tim were covering that and said, like, hey, watch this. There's something really wrong with the financial markets. And sure enough, on March 2020, they blamed the government lockdowns. They blamed COVID. They didn't blame the government lockdowns.
Right. But yeah, the lockdowns were a result. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So like it was baked in there, but nobody was talking about that. This is really like what has happened is the biggest bailout ever of banks. It was like quadruple the amount almost of the last bailout. And they kept on like giving them the trash assets, these derivatives that they created out of thin air, that doesn't really have any value because they are just basically, they give you a little bit of an interest payment on an underlying asset of an underlying asset of an underlying asset. So it's nothing really there other than like other than fake assets, and of course. Warren Buffett called it, financial weapons of mass destruction. These derivatives, and they've been bought up. Like actually, the U.S. Federal Reserve owns almost 30% of all mortgages through these derivatives that they purchased.
Well, and now they're starting to do derivatives within crypto projects with like bringing on, within DeFi, and they're starting to bring on like, liquid staking protocols. And, like while I theoretically like the idea of being able to use staked assets while they earn interest to, accumulate other wealth, I'm like, wait a second. That isn't working. Like that's part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we're like getting into, I think the next like two questions that I kind of have really tie into what you've just been saying. So you're saying like there's, massive, imbalance, and some of it has to do with the problem of really centralization, because the rich are the only people who are able to use their assets to accumulate more while the poor have to borrow from them. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not exactly how it is, but it's like the banksters are there. Like they are the ones that, the people that they deem as having the best credit worthiness, which is the ones that have all the assets. They get near 0%, while we as deemed as higher risk, you get 3 till thousands of percent, depending on how bad they deem you to score on the credit rating. Now I'm not for like I'm not against that it's riskier to borrow to lend money to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, of course. So maybe that like a little bit of higher interest is should be applied if you dare to actually use your own money to lend it to somebody that you deem as a higher risk when it comes to either create a business or doing something to give you a return on it. But if you actually do have somebody with a good track record, you would more likely lend money to them. That the problem is though is that with the current system is now with the restrictions there, they're trying to stop like all this lending and speculation. Well, who do they stop? Well, they stop, of course, like the Joe Bagadonis or whoever is, investing themselves. Meanwhile, BlackRock and Blackstone, all these hedge funds, they're buying exorbitant amounts of real estate in the U.S. right now, that they buy, and then you, as a peasant, are now like the bank is your landlord basically through these hedge funds. Like a hedge fund is your landlord. And a lot of people this was back in 2008 too, this happened, because all the people that defaulted on their mortgages, They lost their house, but then they were able to rent back again. But then Blackstone or BlackRock or any of these big hedge funds, they bought it and then lend it back to them. So they
Yep.
were making the money,
Yep.
of course, on these things. So it's and then of course talking about derivatives, the ETFs that they're trying to push, like for example Bitcoin ETFs. Look where ETFs for silver and gold is. The manipulation of these assets, where they have an exorbitant amount of more assets like paper in circulation and physical underlying assets, and they're trying to do the same thing with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, where they have
Yep.
these ETFs, and it's like, oh, look over here. Here's the price of Bitcoin. It's not the actual spot price that it should be, based upon like how you find like actually how a cryptocurrency is valued. You just simply take like market capitalization in fiat currency that flowed into the asset, then you divide it by coins or tokens in circulation, and
Right.
voila, you have the Bitcoin price. Anybody
Mm-hmm.
could go and do that right now, and they'll figure out that, oh yeah, that's exactly what like the average price is at CoinMarketCap, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big problem with these banks. Are trying to come in and create these like derivatives of things, and then trying to tell us that, oh, this should be the real price, not the Bitcoin price that is deemed by actually a free market,
Uh-huh.
because it is today. Like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are mostly being valued by physical actual free market free market valuations.
Mm-hmm.
It's not based upon manipulation by banks and so on. Now, of course, there is started to become a lot of problems with that as well, where people are overstating or understating supplies and different things. So that's also issues. But then also there's certain, as you said, like CoinMarketCap won't list you unless you like pay whatever to
Yeah, well, because
have. Yeah,
CoinMarketCap is owned by Binance, so that's
yeah,
that's an issue. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So they're becoming the conglomerates and banks and the financial institutions that we so hated and tried to get away from with the initial creation of Bitcoin back in 2009. And now we're kind of like fighting. Like they're creating these institutions that they really like were created to avoid, in the first place. And one of the problems too that I see with some of these maximalists out there that really love, one Bitcoin to be monopoly, basically, which I
Mm-hmm.
highly disagree with. I
Yeah,
want the
yeah,
free
yeah.
market.
Maximal. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the problem is though, now they're talking about, it's like, oh yeah, governments are going to start mining Bitcoin. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so we're gonna have like government controlled, like, are we gonna have a 51% attack, like 51% control of the mining power being like governmentally run? Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that is so much what we wanted to do with this Bitcoin project when it was
Right.
created.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, at least that's what the idealists wanted, and I'm not entirely
Yeah.
sure that it wasn't always part of the plan. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No,
But
no,
so yeah, we're
there's yeah.
like already going on 40 minutes, and I really want to get into Hex because a lot of the problems that we're identifying and that you're identifying for us with the economy and with why our economic system enslaves us. Me and a lot of the people who are viewing think that Hex could be a big part of the solution. So I kind of want to give you like a brief overview and then let you ask me some questions, and maybe even get the audience involved in
I love it.
answering and asking questions. Does that sound okay?
Oh yeah, let's do it. I love it.
Cool. Okay. So Hex is a high yield certificate of deposit on the blockchain. So you trade your, Ether or Bitcoin or dollars or whatever for Hex. And then you can choose to hold it liquid and then just potentially speculate on its value the same way that you would with Bitcoin. Or you can choose to time lock it. And the longer that you lock it, the higher the interest rate that you can earn from locking it is. So you can lock anywhere from 1 day to 5,555 days as the maximum. And then the way that the interest is paid comes from the asset's locked annual inflation. So there's no max supply, but there is a capped inflation of 3.69%. And so like the way that you determine how how the value is going to come is that like, so you take the number of hex and the length of the duration that you want to stake it for, and that determines how many T shares you get, which are trillion shares, and then your trillion shares determine your interest payout. And then in addition to collecting interest from the inflation, and then also because a majority of the asset is not staked, that's why you're earning more than 3.69% in the annual interest. So like, there's, I don't know, 100, say out of 100% of the hex that's in circulation, only 90%, or sorry, only 10% of it is staked. So 90% of it is liquid, which in a way it makes hex like kind of a lending and borrowing, where like the liquid holders are kind of borrowing from the stakers who are the lenders.
It's a bond market, basically.
It's a bond market. Yeah. So then there, in addition to the payouts coming from the annual interest, which also is auto compounding, they also come from when people end their stakes early. So just like if you were going to end a CD early, your bank would keep whatever the penalty is, right?
Yeah.
So with hex, if you end your stake early, if you end it, 50, if you get 50% of what you were, the time that you said you were going to serve, then you get your principal back. And anything over it, just, there's a mathematical equation that determines how much of the interest you lose. And then anything under 50%, you can lose some of your principal as well. So that principal, the penalties that come from early end staking get dispersed, and half of them essentially go to the house, which is known as the origin address, and is probably controlled by the asset's founder, but we don't know. And then the other half of them are distributed to the stakers relative to the number of T shares that they hold.
Okay. Yeah, that's it's interesting. Like I know that bond markets have been one of the tools that will come because of financialization of assets.
Mm-hmm.
So of course that would happen. Now I'm always skeptical to I'm always skeptical, of course, to assets that are that you can actually just put it in and lock it into something, and then basically like who is lending it, for example, and what are they using that borrowed currency to do? Like, are they actually able to, like, what is that invested in, for example? And like the thing is, so yeah, if you have all this, like for example, I'm part of a whole life insurance policy, and the reason how you actually make money in there in a cash account and in dividends there is because we're part of like a group of people basically lending from each other within like in a co-op, basically.
So that's essentially what hex is too, is like the liquid holders are basically borrowing from the stakers.
Yeah.
Because they're cashing out gains today, where like stakers can't realize their gains without paying penalties.
Yeah, and stakers also has to, like as you said, the longer, of course, you lend your stake or whatever, of course, you should like it's more risky, and you should have more of an interest. And it's the same with bonds. If you borrow a bond that is 1 month, it's different than a 30-year bond, for example. Now, in the government world, like having for example, 100-year bond or staking for like 100 years on an Argentinian bond, that's not so good, of course. But like it all depends on what the underlying assets are. When it comes to like how sustainable a project like this will be, of course. So like are people just staking it and it's just sitting and circulating around, or are they actually
the staked hex is actually burned? So it's not part of the circulating supply. The circulating supply is only what's liquid.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Like I would have to like look more. Like I usually like I'm more of a
No, I
visual
want to
guy.
send you. I want to
Yeah.
send you something that like it's the layperson's guide to the Hex smart contract, and have you get like a better idea. By the way, Hex is now back to #3 on CoinMarketCap. That's what we're getting reports from. Thank you, thank you, Siku. That's great news. Yeah.
No, but it's interesting. I definitely I'm all for like having programs like this for the everyday person. You know, the person that actually is, you know, like that we were actually taking over at least, and then getting pieces of the pie of these programs, because usually they're controlled by massive big conglomerates that, you know, you have no recourse. Luckily, with my whole life insurance policy, it's a co-op of people actually owning the company itself. But with most of them, they're just like, you know, a publicly traded company that you have no ownership whatsoever of. So like this whole decentralization of finance, of course, you know, in certain ways, it's actually very positive, because you're taking away the centralization, the centralized power that a lot of these insurance companies, banks, and so on have had
Yeah.
over you. And second is like it depends, you know, like there might be a lot of risks underlying these because of their structures. If they're very similar to other, of course, financial assets in the world that we live in today, they could also be risky as well. On top of that, but like as I said, like earlier, you know, I'm involved in a real estate, you know, token. That they actually are decentralizing ownership of real estate, which is pretty interesting. You know, they're actually trying to like democratize more real estate ownership. So like instead of, but the thing is, like, the reason why it even is created is because real estate is so damn expensive that nobody can get in. So it's actually it's more of a symptom actually to the to a bigger problem, you know, that is the financial system. So we do need, you know, those DeFi tokens. Like they're very great to have for a new economy, but you also need currencies that are, you know, actually can be traded and used
Sure.
as a medium of exchange on
Sure.
top of
And
that.
so Hex is not necessarily like Hex wasn't really meant to be used as a medium of exchange. And it's an Ethereum based token. So transacting in it is expensive, of course, because Ethereum's gas fees are outrageous right now. That said, there is going to be a hard fork, or not hard fork, there is a fork of Ethereum. It's called Pulse Chain. The same founder of Hex is founding this, this fork of Ethereum. And it's actually not just a fork of Ethereum, it's a fork of the entire Ethereum ecosystem. So you're going to get a copy of all of the assets that you hold on ETH on Pulse. So like if you have, Hex, you're going to get a copy of all your Hex.
Oh, very is okay. So it's basically a hard fork, but in a new. So am I getting
But
this
you're
right that
also
they
going to get a
actually
copy of any other ERC20 or ERC771 token that you hold.
Oh, so you're gonna own actually double the amount of assets.
So, but it's not necessarily like, so instead of
Yeah.
having double your, I don't know, let's like USDC is an ERC20, right? So instead
Mm-hmm.
of having like USDC, twice the amount of USDC, you're going to have whatever USDC you had before, and then you're going to have PUSDC. And the value of PUSDC is unknown because, these things will like have to go through market, through
Yeah,
discovery, through
through
price
circle through
discovery.
the market. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. No, you
Mm-hmm.
gotta find the actual market price of the product, of course. So yeah, no, it's interesting to see all those things, and it'll be interesting to see what happened with the token now. Like I mostly like I actually have I used to have 50% of my crypto portfolio being Bitcoin, but now I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually down to 10.
Nice. Yeah, I have
And
very little Bitcoin these
yeah,
days.
and the reason is it's not because it's like pricey or anything. It's because like I'm seeing unfortunate, developments that are happening within
Mm-hmm.
what I was very excited when I found it back in 2012. I wish I would have been smart to actually put some money in and hold it there and not just trade out and in, because I would
So a
be
time lock may have been good for you. Like if you
yeah.
were, you found Bitcoin and you were able to go like, I think maybe this is going to be valuable in some number of years. It would have been
Yeah.
helpful if maybe you could have locked it for a certain amount of time. Oh no. Hopefully John will be back. Um Yeah. Okay, Rango, thank you. Yeah, burnt in exchange for
Hello? Can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Hello?
Can you hear
Oh,
me now?
yeah, there I can, yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry about that, guys. Technical. Oh no, now we lost John again.
Okay, very sorry about that. It was just I'm on my phone, so I was like touching some. It just pulled me out of it. I can't hear you though, so you're gonna have to turn your mic. But again,
Okay,
there we go. Yeah,
hear me now.
perfect. Yeah.
All right, we're having all kinds of technical difficulties. So, you know what's funny is the last time that I had you on a stream, you couldn't get a really good internet connection. So, you ended up just getting in your car and driving around.
Yeah, it was really funny. Like where I live, it's just crappy. Like I live in the countryside, right? So it's my wireless internet that I tried to get, it was horrific. And like I'm just waiting now. There's a fiber optical company that are coming that have gotten massive amounts of investment that promise that they're gonna give fiber, really good fiber. So I'll have like a gigabyte up and down, potentially. So they'll save the world for better. Actually, right now I'm far up north, like working right now, in our province and in the middle of nowhere. But at least I have LTE here, so it's actually pretty good. The stream and everything. I don't think there's too much issues with it. So
No.
uh,
This has been great.
yeah,
All of these like little issues kind of reminded me of that time. So here's
yeah,
something someone says about the Pulse Chain fork. It's a full system state fork. So all NFTs, tokens, etc., everything will be forked over. All your hex stakes will be copied across, as well as your liquid hex. And then with your Ethereum, for like the network token, you'll get a copy of any, of any ETH that you hold, but because the quantity of pulse is like 10,000x, you'll be diluted. So the idea is
yeah.
to like dilute whales.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of interesting too. Actually, like it's like shared illusion.
Yeah. And so
In a
we don't
company.
know, like some tokens will probably not have, end up not being worth anything on Pulse, or, we'll see, but it's certainly not like doubling the amount of tokens that you have on Ethereum. It's copying that
Yeah, it's just a
token.
hard fork. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
basically a hard fork. Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
so it's basically just copy pasting what you have, and then you just have that in a new way. Like you don't have double the amount, but the token though itself actually gets copied. Like the actual token itself, you do have two assets in that token now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the only thing that actually gets that actually you do get double up, like the amount
Yeah.
of whatever you had. And yeah, so yeah, and that could be good, like it have happened to Bitcoin hundreds of times
Sure,
as
sure.
well, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we never know where that's going to go, but it's always good to see these. I would love to know more though, because
Well, so I'm
I'm
going to
trying to.
send you. I wrote, like I said, the layperson's guide to the Hex smart contract, or well, I kind of rewrote it after a developer wrote it, to like remove some of the stuff that no longer applied after the launch phase and simplify it just a little bit further. So I'm actually going to send that to you when we get off the stream, and then I'd love to talk to you again sometime once you've had a chance to look that over.
Yeah, I find this interesting. Like it sounds like a type of bond market where you basically can go in and use that as liquidity for other things as well, right? Like how banks basically use treasuries as the most liquid assets that they could actually trade among themselves as well, for value, like as an underlying reserve account in between people as well. So it's interesting what like there's so much different financial structures that are getting built right now through the DeFi moment, right? So, anything that are trying to beat, like these banksters, I'm all for it. So, it's pretty cool how this whole decentralized finance movement is just like skyrocketed. Like, to insane levels. I don't think we've seen anything of what it can be yet, because like banks are still in massive control. We still have the Federal Reserve.
Well, and
We
so
have
many projects that are saying that they're decentralized finance are not really decentralized finance, because they require people to give up their admin keys. So you actually are not in control of your assets anymore. So
yeah,
Hex actually is like one truly decentralized product. So even though you lock your assets and you can't access them without paying, potentially paying penalties, the smart contract is designed so that you are always in control of your private keys, and it is the only DeFi, truly like DeFi product like that.
Yeah, and that's really good. That's what you need. You
Yeah.
need to own your assets. Like for example, when I have some investments in stocks, I don't own them. It's actually the DTCC that holds all the assets on behalf of the banks, that then give me a token basically of the stock. I don't own that stock. Like I can't get a stock certificate anymore like they did in the old days, like written on papers, like John is a shareholder in Tesla or whatever you invest in, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't exist anymore. There's nobody actually other than I forgot what DTCC stands for again, of course. But if you guys look it up, they actually own all the assets on the stock exchanges in the United States, and so there's nobody actually like holding, like you think that you have a stock or share in something or a bond. Well, you don't. Like it's actually these like that overlaying trust corporation that owns everything on your behalf. So like owning anything that you could actually hold in physical hand or buy, physical ownership, like a lot of private, of course I have everything that I own in crypto, I have private keys to. So
Sure.
if you don't have that, like you don't have any ownership, and that's what of course the central bank digital currencies is all about, is taking that last ownership. For example, in today's system, you can use cash, like you can take up physical cash, and you actually have private ownership over some form of value. Now that it's getting diminished quite drastically, but that you actually do have a physical asset that you actually own,
Sure.
through cash. And it's same with crypto and of course this asset as well. If you don't hold your keys, like forget about, like you don't own nothing, until you actually can then trade it into something that you can own. And same with my precious metal too. Like I don't hold my precious metals with anybody. I keep it at a place where I can actually reach it and grab it and hold it.
Because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, and that's the thing today. Like, there's not much ownership left, and people don't understand that they don't really own the things that they thought they would, and so there's going to be a lot of problems with that, like going forward, and like now with all these bubbles. Like we talked about real estate, but you got a stock bubble, you got a massive debt bubble, and a bond bubble. Like actually, I have a chart that I've been sharing that has like a 700 years of interest rate history, and actually just going downward on diagonal scale down to zero, which we
What's
have
funny is
today.
that I remember you always with the like be like, but the bonds aren't sexy, but like they're the thing that we should be talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, like it's nothing at all but a sexy about bonds. It's uh, and now of course it's just pure trash,
Mm-hmm.
like bonds. And with these governments, spending atrocious amounts of money, these bonds are going to become completely worthless. And the thing is, like, if you have money in your bank account, I've talked to my bankers, and I got in so much trouble with them like lately, because I tried to take out cash, $5,000, and then of course they're saying to me, it's like, well, like it's going to take us 2 days to get that. It's like, well, why can't I get it right now? You don't have
Right. And it's
like
five
$5,000?
thousand dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then they're saying like, well, the reason is it's because we got to get from another bank, like from our other bank, or it's going to be transferred over. And then I say like, well, looking at your consolidated financial statement, that makes sense, because you only hold 1.3% in cash to your physical deposits. So banks today have no cash. Like if we just like 5% of us in each bank went and took out the deposits, all these banks would go bankrupt in an instant. Now, problem is if you haven't taken out a lot of your other assets, you're going to be screwed.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to be screwed, because they have less than, that. And then the thing is, like, I have a hedge fund manager now that is, coming after me because I talked about how the Fed removed their calculation. Like, they're saying that they have some trouble with calculation of GDP, so they suspended showing the numbers. Well, I said, like, well, that's convenient. That is happening right now. It was convenient that they discontinued the way they did M0 money supply, like how they moved savings from M2 over to M1. Are they going to remove M2 now too as well, like to show that it's way less money in supply? But meanwhile, like if you look at the full money supply of all money in existence, it's just skyrocketing as well. So like all these guys are manipulating, and these bankers are just telling me it's like, oh yeah, no, it's we trust the system. Like they're all like bootlickers basically because they run the central bank, and they're telling me that all these assets, these treasuries that the bank hold, that if you get a problem with a bank, they could just sell those assets and then get cash. It's like, I don't think so. Like if you get a debt crisis, nobody's gonna want your like those bonds, and they're gonna go bust and be worth nothing. But the bankers still like are adamantly believing that they have value, which is really funny. I've gotten lately. I've been having a lot of conversations with hedge fund owners. Some totally agree with what I'm saying, and some just hate me with a vengeance and say that I believe in that moon landings were faked and all this stuff just to kind of divert the attention as they're trying to like I literally
just a question though.
there.
Do you believe that the moon landing was fake?
I have no clue, if it was real or not. Right? Like it's evidence for and against. So like, who knows, right? Yeah, it's a lot of things that are uncertain, and especially in these times, like we could go into this whole like supposed crisis that they created around us, right? Like there's so much that are being, in my view, are being told to us that are totally fake of what the actual reality is, and especially in the financial system, like we've been lied to for decades, and they keep on screwing us over, and then we like think that everything is fine this time. It's time to like, as you guys are doing, building your own financial infrastructure and decentralizing yourself and taking ownership over your own assets instead of letting these institutions control you and own all of them, which you didn't really or understand that actually was going on. So the thing is, we got to take back our freedoms one by one by owning assets ourselves and having things that are in a decentralized manner that we could actually trade directly in between each other, and we can actually own and hold things in our own hands. When we can do that, like our power, we become so much more powerful throughout history.
You've got some new fans, John.
Oh, awesome. I love it.
So, there's a bunch of people saying that, there are other members of the community who they'd love to see you talk with. And I think that would be awesome, actually, if that's something that you were open to at some point in the future. I would love to. So I'm going to send you that document that I told you about when we get off of this stream. And then maybe after that, we can like talk about, introducing you around to some other people who may have different kind of questions or be able to elicit different responses from you. But since we are over an hour and it's kind of late where you are, and also I'm tired, I want to wrap things up. And I really want to thank you for your time coming on today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And I like end this show because the real intent is to talk to people who are not already a part of, this specific crypto community, and talk about how we can like build relationships and understand each other, and and introduce you to things, and you get to introduce us to things. So I wrap things up by asking, will you build a bridge with me?
Always. I'm always for building bridges.
Okay, so will you build a bridge with me?
Yeah.
It goes like this.
I always build bridges. Like that's
so can
what
you
society
do it?
is all about. Oh. No, wrong way. Oh, here we go.
It's really confusing. You have to go the opposite way. Yeah. All right, there. That's a good bridge. Thank you, John. All right, so real quick, okay. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work, read your books, buy your books, all that stuff? Can you give them the breakdown?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's theeconomictruth.org. You'll find everything that I do there. I do a lot of economic
And
data.
that link is in the description as well.
Perfect. Yeah, and then also, of course, you can find me at timandjonshow.com, which me and my good buddy, financial advisor Tim Pachot, is running. We're actually working on a newsletter right now with, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Doug Casey, but it's a guy that's like a financial viz when it comes to newsletters. He's trying to help us put together a really top-notch kind of newsletter for people that are interested in money and economics. So that's in the works, like over the next couple of months, and yeah. So just
we
follow us.
Kind of got you introduced to Hex in the perfect amount of time.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I look forward to learning some more about it, and we'll see each other soon, I'm pretty sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love actually. So I haven't had Tim on for a really long time either, but I should send him a message and get that scheduled. Maybe even have you both on. That would be fun.
Yeah, he's hanging out with his crazy uncle right now. That is like he used to work for Citadel, the high frequency trading firm, like one of the biggest Wall Street companies. And he's also like he tried to row across the Atlantic, like he's a triathlete. Like so, Tim was good at telling me some pretty interesting stories, and he actually agrees with a lot of the stuff that me and Tim are talking about as well. Like being one of the like a really big Wall Street guy, really.
Yeah, no, actually, I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember stories about this uncle.
Yeah, he's kind of like Tim's mentor in a way that, like Tim really looks up to him because he has achieved like things that me and Tim are, nowhere near yet to achieve in this world. And so it's great to hear those stories. Actually, me and Tim had on a fantastic guy. We had the co-founder of SpaceX on, like Jim Contrell. Like that was that was a real treat as well. And we actually bumped into him through our friend Ernest Hancock.
That's what I was going to say. Is I remember years ago, whenever it was 2020 or 2019, when I was working for you guys, and Tim was like, "Yeah," or we were at Ernie's, and yeah.
Yeah, that Ernie he's crazy. Like he knows everybody. He actually was the guy that got Roger Ver into Bitcoin.
Yep, I'm familiar. Yep.
So yeah, no, it's pretty cool hanging out with these guys, and you really learn a lot from.
So what's interesting is that group already does have kind of ties. So like, I've had Adam Kokesh on a stream before. This was like before I was familiar with Hex, but Adam has come on streams that's, a different Discourse Syndicate Network program. So there are actually already ties to that like Ernie Hancock community.
Oh yeah, he got his fingers everywhere. He's like a mastermind behind everything that's happening. He has a massive campaign now. He has the Love Bus tour that he's traveling the U.S. with right now, and you gotta love the guy. Like he's all about love, peace, and freedom. So, he's doing his very best to like push that for us, because here in Canada we're like actually turning into a gulag. Like we have a vaccine passport right now in our province.
Yeah. That's a major fear for a lot of people here, myself included. I'm going to Dubai to speak at a crypto conference next month, and I'm like not vaccinated, and I'm like, how am I gonna go?
Right now, you're gonna have to get tested like crazy.
Yeah, right now they're only requiring a negative test. Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah, but like here in Canada, they're actually like now trying to implement so fully. Like I can't even travel anymore, and so it's getting pretty crazy. Like my dad passed away during this whole thing.
I remember, and they said that it was COVID, but he had a heart attack, right?
Yeah, like it's utter bullshit. But like the thing is, like that, I would have to take a month off quarantining. And it's totally insane. Like here they have quarantine hotels and all this. I call them fun camps. Like it's just insane. Like they're returning into like Australia is like it's really bad to see like how our world really like just switched. Like it was like I remember having a presentation in 2019 in Mesquite, Nevada at the Red Pill Expo was called 5G in the Police State, and then nowhere near did I know like what I was talking about. A lot of it like just suddenly just like it was like flicking a switch. And a lot of it's just starting to happen, and it's a big problem. Like that's why we need to really fight for freedoms, and unfortunately, you know, a
That
lot of
starts with
people.
taking control of your money.
Oh, exactly. Like, and that's, you know, well, follow the money with what's happening with COVID. There's some pretty good financial interests there as well. So yeah, we could talk forever about this.
I
But
know. Yeah, we already like did the conclusion and everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, John, for being here. I'm going to send you a link through Telegram shortly after we wrap this up. And I will see you all on Saturday morning. All right.